Yeah, well, the thing is, you and I, though I worked in the office, you and I were primarily talent. And so we're focused on the day-to-day job that we had as talent with where we were going and the match we were having and having the best match and TV and looking ahead and not looking at the business aspect of it and just assuming that, you know, like you say, when things are going well, you know, you think it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it wasn't like, the talent has a tendency to be proud of where they're working to be successful. It's like the one night in Philadelphia where, you know, we were in Convention Hall and the WWF ran the Spectrum that night. And I think that's the only time you and I were ever wrestled against each other on the card. And we outdrew them.
Classic main event match. And we outdrew them. And we outdrew them one time in Cincinnati, too, where we sold out the Gardens and they were in the nice riverfront Coliseum, and we had 10,700 and they had 6,000 with Hulk Hogan.
But
by the way, us in the Rock and Roll, Flair and Dusty. Yeah.
But us as talent. You know, that
was what we were going for, right? Yeah.
That's what we were working for. And I think we looked at Jimmy and the management people to take care of the other side of it. And again, where things turned, I can't put a finger on it, and I really can't blame any one individual. I think it just was a series of things that happened. And I always thought that Vince felt that he was never vulnerable, and I hear stories that he had sleepless nights where he was in fear that he was going to lose it all. And I don't know which is true. But
I'm not sure.
In a war, in life and what have you, there are no winners. There's only casualties. And it's sad for the business that there is only one major player right now because they can only hire so many people. And the guys that are on top are making money beyond what we ever could have imagined. But it's a small
group
people. And back in the day when WCW was still in business, there were 70-some people who were earning a full-time living in the business. And they were a pool of talent that eventually Vince could pull from when he needed. And I could cite Mick Foley, I could cite The Undertaker, I could cite Steve Austin.
Many.
Just
many. Because if there's another company doing any kind of business, they got to have top guys.
Yep.
And those top guys can become your top guys. I'll tell you this, and this is something that a lot of people probably don't realize. I think that Vince never thought that Jimmy Crockett was going to beat him. And I think that Vince at many times thought that Ted Turner or WCW or TBS, whoever might have, and I think he had it backwards. Because I don't think TBS, Ted Turner, Eric Bischoff, WCW, even though they kicked his ass in ratings for that year-and-a-half period of time or whatever, the big Monday Night War, that company was always structured so that to make a profit, they had to literally go out there and be the hottest wrestling promotion of all time. With the salaries they were giving out, the expenses they had, and Bischoff's handing out money, as we've heard, like a drunken sailor.
The key is they were a broadcast company.
They were
not wrestling people.
They weren't wrestling people.
And they figured if the ratings are good, that means more people are watching, and they just assumed that at some point that would translate into more revenue.
Yes, but it didn't.
But it didn't.
And they lost more money than any wrestling promotion in history, but Vince was worried about them. And I was always like, this can't keep up. They're spending a fortune, and they never hurt the WWF really on house shows, just on TV and TV tapings, etc. But point being, Vince was convinced they could beat him, and I didn't think they would. But in the 80s...
Also on pay-per-view, Vince stayed profitable in pay-per-view, and the other place where he was light years ahead was licensing and merchandising.
And international.
And international.
He was scared of Ted Turner and TBS in the 90s, and he shouldn't have been, but he wasn't scared of Jimmy Crockett in the 80s, and he should have been. Because in the 80s, Vince was not that established yet. No. Vince had just done this for a couple of years. Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA style of wrestling was drawing equivalent or greater crowds in house shows and equivalent or greater ratings, and the guys on top were making equivalent money before all the dolls came into effect. But he didn't give Jim Crockett Promotions and all those Southern guys the benefit of the doubt and his fear, because they were a bunch of Southern hillbillies. And they almost kicked his ass, and with a couple of good breaks, they would have won. In the 90s, the Monday Night Wars, a lot of noise, but it was all drones from afar. Nobody was really getting bloody, and in the end, Vince didn't have anything to worry about, as we saw. So he was afraid of the one he was going to win all along, and he wasn't afraid of the one that he almost got his ass kicked off.